In 1955, your father walked into his garage and grabbed a tool that Sears stopped selling 40 years ago. He did not need a YouTube tutorial. He needed his hands and 30 seconds. Number 14 on this list was so dangerous, the Consumer Product Safety Commission nearly banned it, but mechanics still swear nothing works better. And number 6 created a seal so airtight that NASA engineers borrowed the same principle for the Apollo program. These 20 tools built America's suburbs and kept family cars running, but hardware stores replaced them with plastic junk that breaks in a year. Hit that subscribe button because your grandfather's garage was smarter than any big box store today. Let us count them down. Number 20, the hand crank bench grinder. Before plug-in grinders hummed in every shop class, your father bolted a hand crank grinder to the edge of his workbench and sharpened everything by feel. One hand turned the stone wheel, the other held the blade at exactly the right angle, steady as a surgeon. The wheel was usually 6 inches of gray carborundum, coarse on one side, fine on the other. A decent one from Sears Roebuck cost about $4 in 1955. That was a few hours of wages, but the grinder lasted a lifetime. Your dad sharpened lawnmower blades, chisels, axes, kitchen knives, and scissors on that stone. No electricity required, no cords to trip over, no sparks flying into sawdust piles. He could feel the burr forming on the edge through his fingertips, something no electric grinder allows. The slow speed meant the steel never overheated and lost its temper. Every edge came out sharper and lasted longer. When the power went out during a winter storm, that grinder still worked. Hardware stores stopped stocking them by 1972. They were too simple, too cheap, too hard to mark up. Electric bench grinders cost $60 and burn through wheels you have to replace. Your dad's hand crank needed nothing but a steady arm. Number 19, the breast drill. This was the tool that built kitchen cabinets, hung doors, and bored holes through hardwood before anyone plugged in a Black & Decker. Your dad leaned his chest into a curved plate at the top of the drill, pressed his weight forward, and cranked the handle. The gearing multiplied his effort, spinning the bit fast enough to bore clean holes through oak and maple. A Miller's Falls breast drill cost about $3.50 in 1955. It could hold bits up to half an inch, and the 3-jaw chuck gripped tight without slipping. The beauty was control. Your dad could feel the bit biting into the grain. He could stop instantly without over-drilling. No cord meant he could work on the back porch, in the yard, up on a ladder. Electric drills were available by then, but they cost $15, weighed 8 pounds, and overheated on long jobs. The breast drill weighed half that and never quit. Your father drilled hundreds of holes with that tool and never once stripped a screw hole. Try that with a modern cordless drill set to the wrong torque. Number 18, the tire spoon set. Changing a tire in 1955 did not mean loosening 5 lug nuts and swapping a wheel. It meant prying the tire off the rim with a pair of flat steel spoons, patching the inner tube, and muscling the tire back on by hand. Every garage had a set of 2 or 3 tire spoons, heavy forged steel bars about 14 inches long with curved, flattened ends. A set cost $1.50 at the Western Auto Store. Your dad would deflate the tube, wedge the first spoon under the bead, hook it to a spoke or clamp it to the rim, then walk the second spoon around the circumference until the tire popped free. The sound of rubber releasing from steel was unmistakable. A sharp pop followed by the smell of talcum powder and warm rubber. He would find the puncture by holding the inflated tube near a bucket of water, watching for bubbles, then rough up the spot with sandpaper and press on a patch from a Camel repair kit. The whole job took 20 minutes. A new tube cost 60 cents. A shop charged $2 for the same repair. Tubeless tires killed the tire spoon by 1965. But for a decade, every father in America could fix a flat in his own driveway without calling anyone. Number 17, the ratchet brace. Before power drills dominated the garage, the ratchet brace was the king of boring tools. It was a U-shaped crank with a 2-jaw chuck that gripped auger bits, spade bits, and screwdriver attachments. Your dad could drive 3-inch wood screws into framing lumber with one hand on the head and the other sweeping the handle in slow, powerful arcs. A Stanley number 945 cost about $4, and the ratchet mechanism let him work in tight corners where a full sweep was impossible. He would flip the direction collar and back out screws just as easily. The torque was enormous, more than any cordless drill today, without the risk of snapping the screw head. Auger bits pulled themselves into the wood with lead screws, cutting clean holes for plumbing and wiring without wandering. That brace hung on 2 nails above the workbench, always within reach. When your dad built the backyard fence, hung the screen door, or assembled the swing set on Christmas Eve, after the kids went to sleep, the ratchet brace was the tool in his hand. Silent enough not to wake anyone, powerful enough to drive lag bolts into 4x4 posts. Number 16, the soldering copper. Not a soldering iron, not a soldering gun, a soldering copper. A heavy block of solid copper on a steel rod with a wooden handle. Your dad heated it on the kitchen stove or over a propane torch until it glowed dull red, then used the thermal mass of that copper block to melt solder and join metal. A 1-pound copper cost about $2 at the hardware store. The massive heat reservoir meant it stayed hot long enough to solder a full joint without reheating. Plumbers, tinsmiths, and shade tree mechanics all used them. Your father soldered leaky radiators, patched tin roofing, repaired rain gutters, and fixed the galvanized washtub with that copper. The trick was tinning the tip, dipping the hot face in flux and coating it with a thin layer of solder so the metal flowed smooth. Electric soldering irons replaced them by 1960, but those early irons did not have the heat capacity for heavy work. The copper could join 2 pieces of sheet metal that would laugh at a 40-watt iron. Some old-timers still keep one on the shelf. They know. Number 15, the push drill. Yankee screwdrivers, the hardware store guys called them. Your dad grabbed the handle, pushed down, and the spiral mechanism spun the bit automatically. Push, release. Push, release. Each stroke drove the fluted bit deeper, drilling small pilot holes faster than any hand drill and without any electricity. A North Brothers Yankee number 41 cost about $3 and came with a magazine of drill points stored in the hollow handle. Twist the cap, shake out the bit you needed, click it into the spring chuck. Your dad used it for cabinet hinges, drawer pulls, electrical boxes, anything that needed a quick pilot hole before driving a screw. The ratchet mechanism could be set for clockwise, counterclockwise, or locked for use as a standard screwdriver. It fit in a tool belt. It worked overhead. It never needed charging. Stanley bought the Yankee brand and still sells a version today, but the originals, with their rosewood handles and machined steel bodies, were built to outlast the man who bought them. First pattern break. Here is where things get interesting. Your father's garage had a tool that terrified your mother and fascinated every kid on the block. The blowtorch. Not a modern propane wand with a safety igniter. A brass blowtorch that ran on white gasoline and sounded like a jet engine warming up. The Turner or Clayton and Lambert models cost about $5 in 1955. You pumped the handle to pressurize the fuel tank, lit the burner with a match, and adjusted the needle valve until you got a roaring blue flame that could soften frozen pipes, burn paint off clappered siding, and heat soldering coppers cherry red. The brass body got hot enough to burn skin on contact, and there was no automatic shutoff. Your dad aimed that flame at a rusted bolt and the rust surrendered. He sweated copper plumbing joints in the basement with it. He thawed the water line every January. And your mother kept the kids away from the garage when the blowtorch came out. Hardware stores stopped selling gasoline blowtorches in the late 1960s when propane became cheaper and insurance companies got nervous. But nothing since has matched the raw heat output of $5 worth of brass and white gas. Your dad knew how to use it safely because his dad showed him. That was how knowledge worked. Number 13, the wheel puller. Drum brakes meant regular maintenance, and drum brakes meant stuck brake drums. Your dad's wheel puller was a simple 3-jaw device with a center bolt. Hook the jaws behind the drum, tighten the center bolt against the axle, and crank until the drum popped free with a crack that echoed off the garage walls. A snap-on or proto-puller cost about $6 in 1955. The cheap ones from Western Auto cost $2. Either way, every home mechanic owned one because the alternative was beating on the drum with a hammer and hoping not to crack the casting. That puller also removed steering wheels, pulleys, and flywheels. 3 tools in one. It saved your dad $10 every time he did his own brake job instead of paying the Texaco station. Disc brakes killed the drum puller for most cars by the 1980s, but the principle lives on in every machine shop in America. Your dad's puller is probably still in a coffee can in the back of the garage, rusted but functional. Number 12, the feeler gauge set. A fan of thin steel blades, each stamped with its thickness in thousandths of an inch. Your dad slid these between spark plug electrodes, valve tappets, and ignition points to set the gap exactly right. A Craftsman's set cost about $1.50 and fit in a shirt pocket. Setting points on a 1955 Chevy small block meant pulling the distributor cap, cranking the engine until the rubbing block sat on a cam lobe, then sliding the correct feeler blade between the points. Too tight and the engine misfired. Too loose and it ran rough at idle. That feeler gauge was the difference between a car that started on the first crank and one that left you stranded outside the A&P with a bag of groceries melting in the back seat. Electronic ignition killed point setting in 1975. But for 20 years, every American dad who changed his own oil also set his own points. And the feeler gauge was how he did it. Number 11, the tire pressure gauge. Not a digital readout, not a dial gauge. A pencil-style gauge with a sliding metal rod inside a brass tube. Your dad pressed it onto the valve stem, heard the hiss of air, and read the pressure off the graduated rod that pushed out the end. An Acme or Milton gauge cost 75 cents and rode in the glove compartment of every family car in America. Your dad checked tire pressure every Saturday morning before the week started. 28 pounds in the front, 32 in the rear. He knew the numbers by heart. He knew that low pressure meant poor gas mileage and that overinflation meant a blowout on the highway. A gallon of gas cost 29 cents in 1955. Wasting it because of soft tires was like throwing dimes out the window. That simple brass gauge saved more money over a lifetime than any tool in the garage, and it never needed a battery. Second pattern break, controversy incoming, the timing light. Here's where your dad became a backyard engineer. The timing light was a strobe that clipped onto the number 1 spark plug wire and flashed every time the plug fired. Your dad aimed it at the timing marks on the harmonic balancer while the engine idled, watching the strobe freeze the spinning pulley in place. If the mark lined up with the pointer on the timing cover, the engine was in time. If not, he loosened the distributor hold-down bolt and rotated the housing until the mark hit dead center. A basic timing light cost about $8 in 1955. The more expensive ones had an advanced knob that let you check centrifugal and vacuum advance curves. This was real engineering done in a home garage with a tool that cost less than dinner for 4. Modern cars have computer-controlled timing that cannot be adjusted. You plug in a diagnostic scanner and read codes. But your father understood how an engine actually worked because he had to. The timing light taught him that combustion, rotation, and spark were all connected. He did not need a computer to tell him what his ears already knew. Number 10, the grease gun. A foot-long cylinder of stamped steel with a pistol grip and a flexible hose ending in a hardened steel coupler. Your dad pumped the lever and forced a ribbon of chassis grease into every zerk fitting on the car. Ball joints, tie rod ends, kingpins, U-joints. A Lincoln grease gun cost about $4 and a cartridge of Alamite grease cost 30 cents. Under the car on a Saturday morning, your dad would crawl from fitting to fitting, pumping grease until he saw fresh lubricant squeezing out around the boot. Miss a fitting, and that joint wore out in a year. Hit them all every 3,000 miles, and the front end lasted 100,000. Modern cars have sealed joints that cannot be greased. When they wear out, you replace the entire assembly for $300. Your dad spent 30 cents and 15 minutes to make his last another decade. The engineers who eliminated grease fittings did not make cars better. They made them more profitable to repair. Number 9, the tap and die set. A wooden box lined with green felt, holding rows of hardened steel taps and dies arranged by size. Your dad could cut new threads into a stripped hole or restore damaged threads on a bolt in 2 minutes. A Craftsman's set cost about $12 in 1955 and covered every common size from number 6 through 1/2 inch. The tap went into a T-handle wrench, a quarter turn forward, an eighth turn back to break the chip. Clean threads every time. When the bolt holes in the exhaust manifold stripped out from heat cycles, your dad did not buy a new manifold. He ran a tap through the hole, chased the threads clean, and torqued the bolt back down. When a stud snapped off in the block, he drilled it out, tapped the hole to the next size, and used a larger bolt. The tap and die set was the tool that said, "You are not throwing anything away until you have tried to fix it." That philosophy saved American families thousands of dollars a year. Modern mechanics pull the part and order a replacement. Your dad cut new threads and kept driving. Number 8, the hand seamer. A pair of wide, flat-jawed pliers designed for bending sheet metal into crisp, straight folds. Your dad used the hand seamer to fabricate ductwork, patch car fenders, build toolboxes of faucets, and fold flashing around roof edges. A pair of Wiss or Malco seamers cost about $3. The jaws were hardened and ground flat, so the bend came out clean and sharp every time. He could take a flat piece of galvanized steel, scribe a line, and fold a perfect 90-degree flange in seconds. No brake, no machine shop, just leverage and a steady hand. When the dryer vent rusted through, he cut a new one from scrap metal and seamed the edges together. When the rain gutter leaked at the corner, he fabricated a patch and soldered it in place. The hand seamer turned a man with a few dollars worth of sheet metal into his own tin shop. Today, we call a contractor and pay $200 for work our fathers did on a Sunday afternoon. Number 7, the valve spring compressor. Doing a valve job at home was standard maintenance in 1955. Engines burned oil, valves wore out, and a shop charged $40 for what your dad could do in his garage over a weekend. The valve spring compressor was a C-shaped clamp that squeezed the valve spring down far enough to remove the tiny split keepers that held everything together. A KD or Lyle compressor cost about $3. Your dad would pull the head, clamp the compressor over the spring, press down, and pick out the keepers with a magnet. Then he would lap the valve face against the seat with grinding compound and a suction cup tool, spinning it between his palms until the gray paste turned smooth and the valve seated perfectly. Reassemble, torque the head, and the engine ran like new for another 30,000 miles. The grinding compound cost 50 cents. The whole valve job cost less than $5 in materials. That is why the family had one car, and it lasted 15 years. Dad kept it running because he had the tools and the knowledge. Number 6, the flaring tool. A 2-piece clamp and a cone-shaped ram formed a perfect flare on the end of a copper or steel brake line. Your dad clamped the tubing into the die block, centered the cone, and tightened the feed screw until the tubing mushroomed into a precise 45-degree flare. The seal was so perfect that the brake fluid could not weep past it at 1,000 pounds per square inch. An imperial or rigid flaring tool cost about $5. A roll of brake line cost $1. When the brake line rusted through on the family station wagon, your dad did not tow it to the shop and pay $25 for a new line. He crawled underneath, cut out the bad section, bent a new piece to match, flared both ends, and bled the brakes before dinner. The flare had to be perfect. One bad seal meant brake failure at the highway speed. Your dad knew that. He checked his work twice, pumped the pedal, and checked for leaks with a flashlight. That $5 tool kept the family safe. And the engineering behind a double flare was so sound that the same principle sealed hydraulic lines in aircraft landing gear and, yes, rocket fuel systems. Number 5. The crosscut handsaw. 26 inches of spring steel with 8 teeth per inch, set and sharpened by hand. Your dad did not own a circular saw in 1955. He owned a Diston or an Atkins crosscut saw that hung on 2 nails by the garage door. He could rip a 2x4 in 45 seconds and crosscut it in 15 seconds. The saw cost about $4 and lasted decades if you kept it sharp. Sharpening meant clamping it in a saw vise and running a triangular file down each tooth, maintaining the set and the fleam angle that made it cut clean. Your dad sharpened his own saw because the hardware store charged $1, and he could do it better in 20 minutes. He built the backyard fence, the sandbox, the bookshelf in the den, and the workbench itself with that saw. No extension cords, no sawdust blowing in his face, no ear protection needed. Just the rhythmic sound of steel biting through pine, steady and controlled. Power saws made the crosscut handsaw obsolete by 1970. But every piece of furniture your dad built with that saw is still standing. Third pattern break. Before we continue, here is something hardware stores do not want you to think about. Your father's entire garage tool collection cost roughly what you pay for one cordless drill combo kit today. A bench grinder, $4. A breast drill, $3.50. A ratchet brace, $4. A complete tap and die set, $12. His total investment might have been $100 spread over 10 years, and every tool lasted a lifetime. Today, a basic cordless drill kit costs $200, and the batteries die in 3 years. The charger becomes obsolete when the manufacturer releases a new platform. You throw away the old tools and buy the same ones again in a different color. Your dad bought once, he repaired them if something wore out, and he passed those tools to his son. We did not lose tools, we lost a philosophy. The idea that a man should own things that outlast him, that a tool should be an investment, not a subscription. Number 4, the oil can. The classic thumb pump oiler with the long spout that reached into tight spaces. Every garage had one filled with 3-in-1 oil or light machine oil. Your dad oiled hinges, locks, sewing machine mechanisms, bicycle chains, fishing reels, and the garage door track with that can. A Plews or Eagle oil can cost about 75 cents. He filled it from a quart bottle of a household oil that cost 30 cents and lasted 6 months. The long brass spout delivered a single drop exactly where he wanted it. No overspray, no waste, no aerosol propellant. When the screen door squeaked, he gave the hinge 3 drops and the squeak vanished for a year. When the hand drill got stiff, a drop on the gear teeth and it spun like new. That oil can was preventive maintenance in its simplest form. A few drops every month and everything in the house ran smooth and silent. We spray WD-40 on everything now and wonder why it squeaks again next week. WD-40 is a water displacer, not a lubricant. Your dad knew the difference. Number 3, the brace-mounted screwdriver bit. This was the secret weapon for driving and removing stubborn screws. Your dad chucked a heavy screwdriver bit into the ratchet brace and applied the full torque of that 10-inch sweep to screws that a regular screwdriver could not budge. Painted over hinges, rusted deck screws, stripped slot heads. The brace gave him leverage that no hand screwdriver could match, and control that no power driver could equal. He could feel the screws start to move through the handle. He could stop the instant before the head stripped. A set of screwdriver bits for the brace cost $1. Combined with the brace he already owned, it turned one tool into 3. Drill, screwdriver, and nut driver with the right socket adapter. Modern impact drivers hit screws with hundreds of foot-pounds and snap heads clean off. Your father's brace and bit never broke anything because the power came from his own arm, measured and controlled. Number 2, the jackknife. Not a garage tool in the formal sense, but every father in 1955 carried a folding knife in his pocket and used it in the garage more than any other single tool. He opened paint cans with the blade tip. He stripped wire insulation. He cut rope and twine. He scraped gasket material off mating surfaces. He sharpened pencils for marking lumber. He pried staples out of upholstery. He cut radiator hose to length. A case or Schrade jackknife cost about $2 in 1955 and lived in his right front pocket until the day he handed it to his son. The bone or wood handle was worn smooth from years of grip. The blade was hollow ground from decades of sharpening on an Arkansas stone. That knife was the most versatile tool in the garage because it was always there. No walking to the workbench, no searching through drawers. Reach into the pocket, open the blade, solve the problem. We carry phones now. Our fathers carried knives. One of those items can actually fix something. Number 1, the machinist's vise. Bolted to the front edge of every workbench in America, the machinist's vise was the foundation of the home garage. A 30-pound casting of gray iron with hardened steel jaws, a heavy lead screw, and a swivel base that let your dad position the work at any angle. A 4-inch Columbian or Wilton vise cost about $15 in 1955. A serious investment, but it became the most important tool in the shop. Your dad clamped pipe in those jaws for threading. He held brackets while he drilled holes. He bent sheet metal over the edge. He straightened bent bolts. He used the flat anvil surface on the back to hammer rivets and flatten nails. He clamped the lawnmower blade in the vise and sharpened it with a file every spring. That vise held everything still, so both hands were free to work. Without it, half the jobs in the garage became impossible. The Wilton bullet vise from the 1950s sells for $300 at swap meets today because nothing made sense can match the casting quality and the smooth, precise action of that lead screw. Your dad bought it new for $15 and used it every single week for 40 years. It is probably still bolted to that bench, and it still works perfectly. Here is my challenge. Next time you are in your dad's garage or your grandfather's basement, open that toolbox, pick up the breast drill, feel the weight of the ratchet brace, look at the feeler gauge set with oil stains on the blades from 1962. Those tools are still good, they still work, and they will outlast everything hanging in the aisle at your nearest home improvement store. Tell me in the comments which of these tools you still have. Tell me which one your dad taught you to use, because these were not just tools. They were a man's word that he could take care of his family, fix what was broken, and build what was needed. No subscription required.